Okay, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman has been dominating the headlines since Friday when the Mexican drug lord was captured. His escape from a Mexican prison last July through an elaborate tunnel was overshadowed by his recapture now in Sinaloa. That's him on Friday. Now, adding to the drama, believe it or not, is links to actor Sean Penn and Mexican actress Kate del Castillo, who were in contact with him during his time on the run. Now, joining me to talk about the future of El Chapo and whether or not Sean Penn should face any criminal charges is defense attorney Vikas Bajaj. Nice to have you here, Vic.
Good morning.
All right, so this is really an interesting case.
It really is.
From a
every
standpoint,
aspect.
yeah, I mean, you've got El Chapo who's on the run. He's in hiding from all authorities. He escaped from a Mexican maximum federal prison. But it seems like his ego suddenly started. He wants to make a movie about himself. Kate del Castillo's been in contact with him on Twitter. The connection ends up with Sean Penn in Rolling Stone magazine. All right, so Sean Penn was enlisted by Rolling Stone magazine as a journalist to do this El Chapo interview. What we don't know is there's a lot of things we don't know.
Sure,
Your
absolutely.
take on this?
Well, number one, I think there's a lot to do about Sean Penn and any criminal culpability. We've heard things all over the media about, potential federal punishment, both on the U.S. side and also the Republic of Mexico side for harboring a fugitive. The reality is he didn't do anything to make Mr. El Chapo or Mr. Guzman harder to find. As a matter of fact, law enforcement, if the real idea was to capture Mr. Guzman, they should really be patting him on the back because it sounds like, from what we're hearing, the triangulation of cell phone conversations and also nondescript or non-sent email drafts are what led them to El Chapo.
What's interesting is that Sean Penn in his article talks about switching phones and dumping phones and burning phones and changing out to other kinds of ways of communication, and yet somehow the investigative resources of the U.S. and Mexico continue to follow his every movement because they knew he was in contact.
Absolutely. Being a drug lord or drug kingpin, even when we just watch the movies, or people like myself who understand from the inside how law enforcement works and how investigation works, it is a markedly different world now than it was in the days of the 70s and 80s and even early 90s. Technology has caught up with what the rights and the needs of law are. Social media, email, administrative subpoenas, cell phone tower pings, these are armaments and ammunitions that we didn't have in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We have that now, and in order to operate any type of an organization, criminal or otherwise, you need to have one component, and that is communication. Communication now is surveilled more than anything else worldwide.
And it's hard to hide. It's really, really hard to hide.
And it's impossible. But to your point about Mr. Guzman, as far as it being his ego that was the driving force, maybe it wasn't. When you think about it, maybe you understand that the fate of an individual like Mr. Guzman is certain. It's either prison or it's death, and that's the harsh reality.
Yeah.
So if you're faced with those two realities, perhaps it's not ego, but a desire to put your story forward, rather than the populace believing what the media says or what prosecution says. There are bad acts, and he's responsible for a worldwide organization that's caused a lot of harm, but maybe he wanted his side shown to everyone before the certainty of either death or imprisonment.
Okay, so I think that's a fair point, and I think that what if he had picked Charlie Rose or Matt Lauer or me, for example, and said, I want to talk to Carlos, I want to talk to Charlie Rose or Matt Lauer or any journalist, for example. The process may have been exactly the same. The fact that it was Sean Penn, who's done a lot of interesting things in his life and been a correspondent, Rolling Stone picked a guy who was controversial in his own right, but who still told the story and wrote the story and delivered the goods. So he delivered the goods, whether that's criminal or not. To me, it seems completely irrelevant.
How is a person in your position supposed to get valuable information for all of us to see and all of us to hear? How are you supposed to do that if an individual who is a wanted man who has an enormous story to tell by any measure? How are you supposed to be a consultant with the media? How are you supposed to be an accurate reporter without putting yourself in the crosshairs of harboring fugitives or criminal prosecution? There is really a weighing effort that has to occur here. Our First Amendment right to understand what we can see, hear, and proliferate in the media versus the need to capture potentially dangerous criminals. It puts people like you, frankly, given your hypothetical, in a tough position. It's a catch-22.
In fact, what's so interesting about what happened to Sean Penn is that now ISIS was considering doing a similar thing. The leader, Baghdadi from ISIS, and now he's canceled that opportunity.
Smart decision.
All right, Vic, thanks so much for being with us. We'll be back
Absolutely.
with more Good Morning San Diego in just a moment.